Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talent Underground. Today, I'm joined by a guest who sparked movement, built community, and amplified voices that often go too unheard within today's society. I'm joined by Sara Mansour. You're a woman of many talents. I mean, you're a poet, a lawyer, a co-founder and director of Bankstown Poetry Slam and the Muslim Agenda. You've made lasting impact on the Australian art scene by creating space for young creatives to speak truth through poetry. I mean, your art blends society, social justice, identity, and just raw honesty. You've resonated with audiences from all walks of life. Today, we're going to be diving into your journey as a writer, your connection to storytelling, and the movement you built from the ground up. Sara, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Good. What'd you think of that intro?
I'm a bit shy. So very
That's
humbling. Thank you for.
I mean, well, you've done it all. So let's just start from the very top. I'm just kind of curious about where your love for poetry kind of came from.
Yeah, sure. So funnily enough, I didn't actually like poetry in high school. And yeah, it was one of my least favorite things to study in English, and I was really good at English actually, but just I the thing that I hated about poetry, which is the thing that I love the most now about poetry, is that poetry has no rules. And so, for someone who's trying to get good grades, it's hard to interpret, it's hard to kind of, make sense of things that are sometimes like that feel so abstract and so far away from your own lived experience. And maybe that's because we were studying poetry like from Shunesky and Yeats, and it didn't really relate to me on a personal level. And then when I actually got into poetry, I was in uni. I was in my second year of uni, and I watched some spoken word poetry online, and I was immediately hooked. And I thought, okay, I want to try this.
For sure. I mean, something about that spoken word poetry. I mean, I can see within your works, it's very raw. Like, I understand what you mean. I remember being back in high school, listening to some of the work that we had to do back then. It just kind of, it didn't really resonate with me as well. So I feel like when you're able to kind of craft around what you want to do and when you can relate it to your own experiences, it could end up being something that you're pretty enjoyed by. Let's talk about your work, obviously, not just as a poet, but also as a lawyer. I find that really interesting.
Yeah.
Is there much intersection between your work within law and then the work that you're crafting as a poet?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I predominantly work in commercial law and property law. And when you're drafting clauses or contracts, the thing that you need to be most aware of is your use of certain words and the placement of those words. And you're always kind of thinking about, okay, how is the other side going to read this? How is a layperson going to read this? How is a judge going to read this if it ever got litigated?
Yeah,
And so that intentionality with words lends itself a lot to being a writer, and especially specifically a poet, because you have such limited space with poetry. You're always kind of thinking about really specific words to use.
sure.
And yeah, there's lots of synergies in that regard.
Yeah, look, my girlfriend is studying law. She's doing her PLT at the moment, so I totally see where you're coming from with all of that. It's very tedious with the wording and all that sort of stuff, and I can definitely see how that relates to poetry particularly. I mean, what were some of the early challenges you faced as a poet, especially coming from your background? There probably isn't a whole lot of representation, particularly with the Arab society in poetry, I'd imagine.
No, there wasn't actually. So, when I started writing and performing poetry, there weren't actually any events in Western Sydney. So I kept having to travel to Newtown and to the city to attend events and to be able to kind of get this exposure and experience. And these events were predominantly held at pubs. And that meant that I couldn't bring my younger siblings
Yeah,
along with me. And also, as a Muslim woman, I don't drink. So I just didn't feel comfortable around people that were drinking. No judgment, but it's just, it's sometimes weird to be the only sober person in
yeah.
the room.
Trust me, I
Um,
know.
yeah. So really the big challenge, well, was that no other place existed at the time that was accessible. And that's how Bankstown Poetry Slam was born. Number one, kind of out of laziness, because I didn't want to keep traveling out
Yeah.
that way to attend these events. And then number two, because I wanted to have a space that wasn't in a pub where, younger people could also come. So I could bring my younger siblings along and let them watch me and all my
Yeah.
magic, do my thing.
For your glory. I mean, at what point did Bankstown Slam Poetry turn from what was a local event to something that became nationally recognized? Was there a moment where you kind of looked at it and was like, okay, like I've kind of made it into this big thing in a way?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't done with that intention or any foresight at all. Like we had no plan whatsoever. We just set up a Facebook page and just started hosting, monthly events on the last Tuesday of every month. Um, and then somehow it snowballed. And I think part of the reason was that it was free. Um, and so, the fact that it was number one, no barrier to entry in terms of financial access, but also low barrier to entry in terms of participation, because all you need was to write your poetry and come and perform it. The space is there. So you don't need any specific training or skills to be able to come and participate. So those two things, coupled with a really tense environment at the time, and really that hasn't dissipated in a way, but at the time, our community in Western Sydney, specifically Arabs and Muslims, were being targeted by media. There was the anti-terror raids, there was the Syrian war and the Arab Spring, and there was a lot of rhetoric about Arabs and about Muslims, but never by us. We never got to take the microphone and say what we had to say. And that frustration was the perfect environment to kind of give rise to BPS. And I think that's one of the reasons why it became so big. And I think the moment for me when I realized it had become bigger than just a person or bigger than just, the community, I always go back to this is someone told me that they live month to month just to attend the Bankstown Poetry Slam. So that's the thing that's keeping them going, because it was so important to them to know that they had a space that they could return to every month, and they knew that they would be heard, and they knew that a community would be holding space for them.
Yeah,
And that's when I realized that it was really important and it was something that I
for
couldn't give
sure.
up
I mean,
on.
it definitely seems like it's pretty impactful, not just for older people and the people who've been doing the poetry craft for a long time, but also to kind of uplift young voices and marginalized people. I mean, how important is that to you that you've created a space that uplifts diverse people and all walks of life, particularly those who are marginalized and don't particularly have a voice? You've kind of become the voice for the voiceless in a way on this platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's super important. It's important because it's about reclaiming our power and our agency. And what that does for someone in terms of their mental health, in terms of social cohesion on a broader community level, in terms of empowerment, those things can't even be measured. It's changed people's lives, and it's something that it's a privilege that and an honor that I get to be a part of it, and I don't take it lightly. And I know the impact it's had on me on a personal level as well. Like, there were a lot of things that I had to unlearn throughout the years in terms of internalized shame and internalized Islamophobia. So, kind of like reclaiming my own identity and reclaiming all the parts of myself that I thought were ugly or unlovable because I'm Arab or because I'm Muslim. Like, the poetry slam and poetry has also been integral to that transformation within
Yeah. I
myself.
mean, I can only imagine. You speak on how impactful it is and the effect that it's had, not just on other people, but also within yourself. Do you have a standout moment or a performance that just kind of stands out as like the magnum opus, the pinnacle of your career as a poet?
Um, that's a really good question. Um, I mean, one moment that comes to mind and something that was kind of like a pinch me moment was when Agnes Obel came to Sydney and she was performing at City Recital Hall, and she asked that a poet open for her, and somehow
Yes.
I got tapped on the shoulder because someone else couldn't do it, so it just was my destiny. And the funny thing is that 10 years ago, I used to listen to her music and I had like used to share it on Facebook and
Wow.
stuff. So it's just kind of one of
Yeah,
those
for
full circle
sure.
moments, because sharing, someone's music on Facebook, you'd never think in a million years that, in a decade you'd be performing on stage to open
Yeah,
up
that's
for them.
insane.
Yeah, that was a really, really
Yeah.
special moment. And someone in the audience was from Marie Claire. And then I got invited to perform at the Marie Claire Women of the Year Awards that year as well. So that was in 2022. So yeah, I think that one is a
Yeah, I
really
can only
special one for
imagine that would
me.
be a really special and also just overall cool moment to be able to stand up on that stage and open up for someone who you've been inspired by, I'd imagine. So, like,
Yeah.
with all that being said, I mean, you've obviously been doing this for a long time. Do you feel like your writing style, your work as a poet has changed, developed, and evolved over the years? And how so, if you think?
Yeah, definitely. One of the biggest things that I've learned about writing and performing is that you need to read a lot. And so, in the early stages, when I wasn't reading a lot or kind of consuming a lot of poetry, you could say that my work was probably a little bit more cliche. And so, what reading has done is it's opened me up to different ways of thinking and writing, and challenging yourself and challenging your ideas about what is good and what is, great poetry. And I think that also my sources of inspiration have changed over the years as well. Um, a lot of like the middle chunk, I would say, kind of like between 2 to 5 years ago, a huge inspiration for me was kind of like womanhood and the female experience, and kind of honoring my ancestors and drawing inspiration from them. So you'll see a lot of that in my writing. And now it's kind of shifted a little bit more to paying homage to community. So, for example, one of the most recent poems I just wrote last week was an ode to the Macca Stairs in Bankstown. Do you remember
Yeah,
the
I
Macca
did see that
Stairs?
on your Instagram story.
Yeah, so I ended up writing a poem about that. So I'm trying to, um, you know, I guess capture these little moments and these little lived
Yeah,
experiences that are shared for people in the area. It's something that's really important to me, because it's not often that people from the area get to see themselves reflected in
yeah,
art in a positive way, or in the media. It's always quite negative. And poetry for me has gives me the opportunity to challenge those misconceptions and stereotypes, and to celebrate the richness and the incredible kind of not only diversity but the joy that our communities
yeah, for sure.
hold.
I mean, I feel like you're pretty spot on in talking about how people within the area don't really get represented all that much in a positive light when it comes to arts. I mean, there's a rising amount of it within music, but it's mainly within the rap sort of sphere. I feel like something like poetry, you don't really see a whole lot of, and it's pretty cool to see. So I'd more on that. What advice would you give to people, particularly within either the background that you come from or even the area, who want to kind of be put onto writing poetry and becoming an artist? What advice would you give them to help uplift them and I guess keep them going?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, the advice that I got, that I always share with other people, is write your own story. I think it's really important to honor yourself and your own story first through your writing and to be proud of it, um, even if you don't think it's worth telling. And that was me. Like, when I started writing, I would write about everything else except for, you know, my culture and my faith, because I didn't think that anyone wanted to hear that stuff. I was kind of mirroring what I was seeing. And then it wasn't until someone told me, write your own story, that it kind of felt like permission for me to explore those parts of myself
Yeah.
through writing. So that's always my advice, is write your own story. Um, and also come to the Bankstown Poetry Slam, because we're a really supportive community, and I think you can make friends and just develop a little poetry posse. And yeah, it's really nice to just have a group of people who are
Yeah,
cheering
for
you on.
sure. I mean, and one final thing before we wrap it up, obviously segueing off your promo for Bankstown Poetry Slam, what do you have in the works? Any new performances, any new projects that we should keep an eye on, particularly within the Bankstown Poetry Slam scene?
Yeah, so coming up very soon is the partnership with Sydney Writers Festival. So we have Plessia a la carte featuring, and she's just doing her book tour. So that's happening on the Friday, the 23rd of May. And then otherwise, we have the poetry slams on the last Tuesday of every month. And we also founded the National Youth Poetry Slam a few years ago. So this year that'll be happening in November. So if you're aged up to 24 and you're interested, people can enter from all around the country just through a video submission, and then we fly them into Sydney for the finals. So that's also something that's really
Yeah,
exciting.
awesome. I mean, it seems like you've got a pretty packed out agenda. It seems like there's a lot going on. I'm actually going to be in attendance at the Writers Festival in May. I'm super keen for it. The Eyes of
Awesome.
Palestine thing just kind of stood out to me. The stories of Palestine. I'd love to hear more about it. But as for this in conversation, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Look, obviously you're doing an amazing job within the community, not just Bankstown Slam poetry, not just in law, but I also feel like the uplifting of young voices. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, and I'll definitely be keeping an eye out on your work. Everyone else back at home, be sure to follow Sarah on all the social media platforms. Like she mentioned, there's a Sydney Writers Festival coming up, as well as Bankstown Slam Poetry on the last Tuesday of every month. This has been Joseph Sayun. That's been Sara Mansour, and this has been Talent Underground. Sarah, thank you so much.